Welcome back to another deep dive, and today we're tackling the 22 immutable laws of marketing. I know you're really interested in what makes or breaks a marketing campaign, like the core drivers, not just, those flashy tactics. That's what we're going to uncover today.
Yeah, what's really fascinating about this book is that it argues there are these fundamental laws of marketing, almost like laws of physics, like unchangeable rules that determine success.
Interesting.
They even say that ignoring these laws can lead to failure no matter how innovative your idea is or even how much money you throw at it. The authors even point to big names like IBM, General Motors, Sears. It's almost like they suggest people in marketing don't even want to admit these laws exist.
So why should all this matter to someone listening right now?
Well, think of it this way. Understanding these laws gives you a powerful framework
A framework for what?
for analyzing anything, really. Like if you're launching something new or trying to figure out why some brands just dominate, or even if you're just curious about what really shapes the business world.
So we're going beyond just the surface level, the trends, and getting into those deeper mechanics.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm sold. Let's dive into the first one.
All right, the first law is the law of leadership. And it's pretty straightforward. It's better to be first than it is to be better.
Okay, expand on that a little.
Sure. The book basically says it's way easier to be the first brand or concept that pops into someone's head than to try and convince them that yours is better than the one they already know.
I like how they illustrate this with Charles Lindbergh, the first guy to fly solo across the Atlantic.
Yeah, what about him?
Well, can you name the second person who did that?
No, not off the top of my head.
Exactly. It was Bert Hinkler. Apparently a much better pilot, faster, more efficient, the whole 9 yards. But we remember Lindbergh. So being first often creates this unshakable advantage.
Makes sense. And the book has tons of examples from the business world, too.
Like, I don't know, Hertz, IBM, Coca-Cola.
Exactly. Were they objectively better than everyone else? Maybe, maybe not. But they were first. And that cemented their spot in the minds of consumers. And think about Heineken. After World War II, they were the first imported beer to really make it big in the U.S.
And even today, you walk into a bar, so many imported beers, but Heineken is still up there, one of the top sellers.
Absolutely. And another great example is Miller Lite. They were the first to introduce a domestic light beer. And look at them now.
Still dominating, right? But hold on, there's got to be a catch. What if, you're not first? Is it game over?
Not necessarily. The book's really clear about this. Being first doesn't guarantee you'll win forever. Timing is super important.
Yeah, think about USA Today, the first national newspaper. The book suggests maybe it was just too late. TV was already taking over. Same thing with TV Guide. They basically blocked a similar magazine, Curtis, from taking off.
Timing is key. And here's the thing. Even if you're not first overall, you can still be first in a new category. That's where things get really interesting.
So many examples come to mind. Jeep and four-wheel drive. Acura was first in luxury Japanese cars when they launched in the U.S. Even in pharmaceuticals, Tylenol, the first acetaminophen, still a household name, and Charles Schwab basically created discount brokerage.
It's a pattern, isn't it? And it makes you realize that marketing is all about perception, not just having the better product.
Right. And even if your product is technically better, that doesn't mean people will automatically see it that way.
The authors talk about the trap of benchmarking, where companies get caught up in comparing features and specs. What they're saying is people tend to think the first thing they experience is the best, regardless of what the data says.
Makes you think, right? So what's the advice if you're not first? Is it a lost cause?
Not at all. The key is to find a new category where you can be first. This is where strategic thinking really shines.
Love that. And there's so many companies that have done this brilliantly. Think about DEC. They made it huge by focusing on mini computers, a whole new category after IBM dominated mainframes.
Right. And then you have Tandem focusing on fault-tolerant computers, Stratus on fault-tolerant mini computers, Cray with supercomputers. Even Commodore Amiga found their initial success as the first multimedia computer.
And it's not always about tech. Dell changed the game by selling PCs directly over the phone. And think about Lear's magazine, targeting a specific audience, mature women, that no one was really paying attention to.
Exactly. So the takeaway here is, even if you're not first in the overall market, you can carve out your space by creating a new category and owning it.
Which brings us perfectly to the third law.
The law of the mind.
And this one, it really builds on that whole being first idea, but takes it a step further.
It basically says it's better to be first in the mind than to be first in the marketplace.
That's a subtle but huge difference.
It is. Being first to market only matters if you can also be the first brand people think of.
Like you're saying there are companies that were first to market but didn't become the household names?
Tons of examples. Take the M.I.T.'s Altair 8800, often considered the first personal computer.
Oh, wow. I've never even heard of it.
Exactly. And the same goes for the Dumont, the first commercial TV, the Duryea, the first automobile, Hurley, the first washing machine. They were first, but they didn't win the mind share.
Interesting how IBM, with mainframes, they weren't actually first. Remington Rand's UNIVAC beat them to it.
Right. But IBM's marketing was so powerful that they became the name everyone associated with mainframes.
So it's not just about getting there first, it's about capturing that mental space.
Exactly. And the authors make this point. Just throwing money at marketing doesn't guarantee success.
They actually say more money's wasted in marketing than almost anywhere else.
It's true. Money can help, but it's not the only answer. Once someone's mind is made up about a product or brand, it's incredibly difficult to change. They compare it to trying to change a deeply held belief.
Makes sense. But what about those overnight success stories we hear about all the time?
Even those require a big initial push. You have to really grab attention, not just slowly try to build an image.
You have to blast your way into the mind, right?
That's what the book says. And another thing that can really help, a simple, memorable name.
Like Apple.
Exactly. Back in the day, they were up against computers with names like Commodore PET, MSAI, 8080, those crazy long ones.
So their name definitely played a role in their success.
Absolutely. It helped them stand out and stick in people's minds.
Okay, I'm starting to see a pattern here.
Right. And that leads us right into the fourth law, the law of perception.
Okay, hit me with it. What's this one all about?
The core idea is that marketing isn't about products. It's about perceptions.
What does that even mean?
It means what people believe about a product matters more than what's actually true about it.
That's deep. So it's all in the consumer's mind.
Precisely. The book says all truth in marketing is relative. It's about the customer's reality. And get this, most people think they're better at judging things than others, so they trust their own perceptions.
Which means marketing is all about shaping those perceptions, right?
Yeah, you got it. And the authors argue that lots of marketing mistakes happen because people think it's a battle of products, about features and specs. But this book is saying it's the opposite.
It's a battle of perceptions. Fascinating.
Right. And once those perceptions are formed, they're really hard to change. They become ingrained beliefs.
Like everybody knows this or that.
Exactly. The book gives some cool examples of how this plays out in the real world. Think about Japanese car brands in the US versus Japan.
So like Honda, Toyota, and Nissan, they're all sold in both countries, but their market share is different.
Exactly. In Japan, Honda's actually not the market leader, even though they make great cars. So it's not just about the product itself, it's about how people perceive the brand.
So interesting. And think about Honda again. In Japan, they were initially known for motorcycles. That early perception still kind of hangs around even though they sell tons of cars.
And it affects their market position.
Yeah.
You see the same thing with Campbell's soup in the US and Heinz soup in the UK. Probably not a huge difference in taste, but the perception is what drives sales.
Oh, and the new Coke fiasco is the perfect example.
Tell me about it. They did all these taste tests, and people supposedly preferred new Coke.
But it flopped. Coca-Cola Classic came back and dominated.
Because in the end, people didn't want a different taste. They wanted the feeling of the original Coke.
Perception over product, right?
Yeah.
It's so crazy how often we buy things based on what we think everyone else thinks, even if we haven't tried it ourselves.
Yeah, like everybody knows Japanese cars are more reliable, or everybody knows that certain clothing brands are more stylish.
Even if it's not necessarily true.
Exactly. And that lingering perception about Audi and the unintended acceleration thing, even after they were cleared, it's all perception.
Okay, this is mind-blowing stuff. What's next on our list of laws?
Law number 5, the law of focus. This one's all about narrowing your message, focusing on one key word or concept.
Keep it simple.
Right. The book actually calls this the ultimate sacrifice in marketing.
Because you're choosing to be known for one thing and letting go of everything else.
Exactly. Like Federal Express. They nailed it by focusing solely on overnight delivery.
And they became synonymous with it, so much so that people often say FedEx it when they mean any overnight delivery, regardless of the company.
Exactly. And that's what often happens with the market leader. They end up owning the word that defines the whole category. Like, you say computer, you think IBM, copier, Xerox, chocolate bar, Hershey's.
Cola, Coke. It's like their brand name becomes the generic term.
The book gives so many examples. Crest owns cavities, Mercedes owns engineering, BMW driving, Volvo safety, Domino's home delivery.
This is making me think differently about branding already.
Right. And the authors point out sometimes companies need to change their focus word, but it's super hard.
Like trying to rebrand yourself.
Exactly. Like Lotus, the software company, they own Spreadsheet with their program Lotus 123. But then they tried to shift to groupware. Didn't really work.
Trying to be something you're not.
And the book warns against trying to grab a word that your competitor already owns.
Like trying to steal their thunder.
Exactly. Like Atari, they were huge with video game, but then they tried to go after computer against Apple and IBM. Big mistake.
It backfired, huh?
Totally. And then Nintendo came in and dominated the video game market Atari left behind. Ironic, isn't it?
So focus is about choosing your battle and sticking to it.
That's the gist of it. And don't try to be everything to everyone. That just dilutes your message.
The authors also say to avoid generic words like quality.
Yeah, everyone claims to have quality. GM with their mark of excellence, Ford's quality is Job 1. Chrysler used to claim they had the best quality. It's meaningless because it's not unique.
It has to be something that sets you apart.
Right. And once you found your word, you have to defend it, like BMW did with driving.
Actively protected in the marketplace.
Yep. The book even has this thought-provoking example from an anti-drug campaign.
Oh, tell me about it.
They suggest focusing on the word loser to make drugs seem uncool.
Wow. Interesting strategy.
Right. By associating it with a negative identity, you make it less appealing.
Clever. So focus is about owning a word, a concept, and making it yours.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the sixth law, the law of exclusivity.
Okay. Lay it on me.
This one's simple but powerful. Two companies can't own the same word in the prospect's mind.
Seems obvious, right?
You'd think so, but the book says it's a common mistake. Companies try to steal their competitor's word, and it usually backfires.
Makes sense. You can't just take something that's already strongly associated with someone else.
Right. Remember Volvo and safety? Tons of car companies try to promote safety features, but Volvo owns that word.
No one can take it from them.
And think about Atari again. They tried to take computer from Apple and Commodore, and we know how that turned out.
Not well.
What's even more interesting is that trying to steal a word often reinforces it for the competitor. It's like you're reminding people of their dominance.
Oh, that's a good point.
The book uses the example of FedEx trying to take Worldwide from DHL. Probably not going to work.
And the Energizer Bunny trying to take long-lasting from Duracell.
Another tough battle. And sometimes market research can actually lead companies in the wrong direction here.
How so?
Well, research might say that fast is a desirable attribute for fast food, but it doesn't mean you can just grab it if McDonald's already owns it.
Right. Burger King learned that the hard way.
Exactly. So the takeaway from this law is know the landscape. Don't try to fight a losing battle over a word that's already taken. Find your own unique word and own it.
All right, we're making good progress here. Let's move on to the seventh law.
The law of the ladder.
Intriguing name. What's this ladder all about?
It's a really cool concept. Basically, it says that your marketing strategy depends on where your brand sits on the mental ladder in the minds of your customers.
A ladder of brands. Interesting.
Right. So imagine a ladder for, say, car rentals. Hertz might be on the top rung, Avis below, then National, and so on.
Makes sense.
And the book says the number of rungs on the ladder depends on how interested people are in that category.
So products everyone buys all the time would have more runs.
Exactly. Things like cigarettes, cola, beer, toothpaste. Those have more recognizable brands, but things you don't buy often, like furniture, fewer brands come to mind.
So higher interest categories, more rungs.
Right. And products associated with status, like cars or watches, even if you buy them less often, they tend to have more rungs too.
Because people care more about those brands.
That's it. And on the flip side, things you buy rarely and that aren't fun to buy, like car batteries or life insurance, those have very few rungs.
And the ultimate one-time purchase, caskets, probably has barely any ladder at all.
Exactly. And the book says your market share usually lines up with your position on the ladder.
So the higher you are, the bigger your market share.
Usually. You'll have about twice the share of the brand below you and half the share of the one above you.
Wow, that's a pretty clear pattern.
It is. And the top three brands aren't always equal. The leader usually dominates the second place, who then dominates the third. And there's a limit to how many brands people can even recall in a category.
How many?
Usually around 7. It's called the rule of 7.
Interesting. So Even if you're number one, you're not untouchable, and there's always someone trying to climb up below you.
That's the game. And sometimes the ladder itself might just be too small.
Meaning,
Like your category is just too niche. It might be better to be a smaller fish in a bigger pond.
makes sense. So instead of being number one in a tiny market, you aim to be, say, number three in a massive market.
Exactly. Like 7-Up did with their Uncola campaign. They moved from the smaller lemon lime category onto the huge cola ladder. Smart move.
So before you even think about your marketing, you need to figure out where you stand on the ladder.
Absolutely. You have to be realistic about your position.
So to recap, these first 7 laws have given us so much to think about. The importance of being first, or creating a new category if you can't be first.
Right? And how it's all about perception, owning a word in the customer's mind, not just having the best product.
And don't try to steal the word that already belongs to your competitor. Figure out your own word and fight for it.
And finally, understand where you are on the ladder. Your strategy flows from there.
Exactly. Now, for everyone listening, here's something to consider. Think about a brand you admire, or maybe one that's always confused you. How do these laws apply to them? Can you see where they're using them? Maybe even where they're breaking them?
It's a great way to analyze what they're doing and understand why they're successful or maybe why they're not.
And remember, this is just the beginning. There are more laws to uncover, even deeper insights into the world of marketing.
If you're intrigued by what we've discussed today, we highly recommend checking out the full book, The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. It's full of valuable knowledge that can really change the way you think about business and success.
Until next time. Welcome back to another deep dive, and today we're tackling the 22 immutable laws of marketing. I know you're really interested in what makes or breaks a marketing campaign, like the core drivers, not just, those flashy tactics. That's what we're going to uncover today.
Yeah, what's really fascinating about this book is that it argues there are these fundamental laws of marketing, almost like laws of physics, like unchangeable rules that determine success.
Interesting.
They even say that ignoring these laws can lead to failure no matter how innovative your idea is or even how much money you throw at it. The authors even point to big names like IBM, General Motors, Sears. It's almost like they suggest people in marketing don't even want to admit these laws exist.
So why should all this matter to someone listening right now?
Well, think of it this way. Understanding these laws gives you a powerful framework.
A framework for what?
For analyzing anything, really. Like if you're launching something new or trying to figure out why some brands just dominate, or even if you're just curious about what really shapes the business world.
So we're going beyond just the surface level, the trends, and getting into those deeper mechanics.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm sold. Let's dive into the first one.
All right, the first law is the law of leadership. And it's pretty straightforward. It's better to be first than it is to be better.
Okay, expand on that a little.
Sure. The book basically says it's way easier to be the first brand or concept that pops into someone's head than to try and convince them that yours is better than the one they already know.
I like how they illustrate this with Charles Lindbergh, the first guy to fly solo across the Atlantic.
Yeah, what about him?
Well, can you name the second person who did that?
No, not off the top of my head.
Exactly. It was Bert Hinkler. Apparently a much better pilot, faster, more efficient, the whole 9 yards. But we remember Lindbergh. So being first often creates this unshakable advantage.
Makes sense. And the book has tons of examples from the business world too.
Like, I don't know, Hertz, IBM, Coca-Cola.